A very good morning and namaskar. It's just past 8 this morning and we are back once again with Breakfast News. I'm Samriddhi Goel. Over the next 60 minutes, we get you everything, all the news from across the globe, from the world of sports and business. But first, let's take a look at the headlines. Russia and Ukraine accuse each other of shelling Europe's biggest nuclear power plant at Zaporizhzhia. UN Chief Antonio Guterres proposes a demilitarized zone at the site, while International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rahul Grossi hints at the grave consequences of such military operations. India expresses concern and calls for mutual restraint. Pakistan's economy faces serious debt burden, looms danger of default on external loans. Pakistani policymakers act more in desperation rather than focusing on structural reforms as sought by the IMF to help the economy overcome its balance of payment crisis. Latvia and Estonia withdraw from cooperation group between China and over a dozen Central and Eastern European countries, follows footsteps of Baltic neighbour Lithuania, which withdrew last year. Move comes amid Western criticism towards China over escalating military pressure on Taiwan and Beijing's ties with Russia during the invasion of Ukraine. European nations send firefighting teams to help France tackle a monster wildfire, while forest blazes also raged in Spain and Portugal. The head of the European Space Agency urges immediate action to combat climate change. The largest annual celebration of Indian cinema outside of India, the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne, starts today, screening over 100 films from a range of genres, themes and voices for our audiences to enjoy both in person and online. The International Youth Day 2022 being celebrated today across the world with the theme Intergenerational Solidarity, creating a world for all ages, bringing youth issues to the attention of the international community. International Youth Day celebrates the potential of youth as partners in today's global society. And in sports, Rahul receives green signal from the BCCI's medical team to head the Indian team in the forthcoming 3 ODI tour of Zimbabwe. Shikhar Dhawan made the vice-captain for the series. FIFA officially brings forward the opening match of this year's World Cup by one day to November 20th in a rare schedule change, allows the host nation Qatar to play after the opening ceremony. Well, let's begin our today's bulletin where we bring you news from across the globe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelinsky has condemned the fresh Russian strikes on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Zelinsky called the strikes as one of the greatest crimes. He also said only the complete withdrawal of Russians would ensure the restoration of nuclear security for the entire Europe. The plant was captured by Russian forces in the opening stages of the conflict.
What is going on now around Zaporizhzhia NPP is one of the greatest crimes of the terrorist state. Today, new strikes in close proximity to the NPP objects have been recorded. Russia has again hit the bottom in the world history of terrorism. No one else has used a nuclear power plant so obviously to threaten the whole world and set some conditions. And absolutely everyone in the world must react immediately to kick the occupiers out of Zaporizhzhia NPP. It is a global interest rather than just a Ukrainian need. We are emphasizing on this at all levels, from the UN Security Council to contacts between states. Only the complete withdrawal of Russians from the territory of the NPP and restoration of full control of Ukraine over the situation around the plant guarantee the restoration of nuclear security for whole Europe.
Гарантують відновлення атомної безпеки для всієї Європи.
Ukraine and Russia blame each other for new strikes on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Ukraine's Interior Minister Denis Monastrsky said that Ukraine had to be ready for any scenario at the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that has been hit, shelling, including evacuating people from the area. Ukraine and Russia-installed local officials blamed each other for a new volley of shelling on Thursday at the nuclear power plant, which is Europe's biggest and lies in the southern Ukraine.
Існують плани по тому, щоб
There are plans that consider every possible development of the situation, including discharge of the radiation. That's why our plans include the evacuation from nearby settlements. I want to remind that this is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. It has 6 energy blocks. Of course, it is difficult to even imagine the scale of the tragedy which could come into effect if Russians continue their actions there.
масштаб трагедії, який може відбутися в разі.
Well, meanwhile, UN Chief Antonio Guterres has also voiced concern over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant strikes, calling for demilitarization of the area around Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. The UN Security Council will also hold meetings to discuss the situation. He urged the withdrawal of military personnel and equipment and for no more forces or equipment to be deployed. He called for Russia and Ukraine not to target the facilities or surrounding area. The UN has also urged for immediate access to expert team to Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia power plant. Well, as the United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has called for an end of military activity around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant complex, IAEA chief briefed the 15-member Security Council about the situation. Grossi said that he was ready to lead an IAEA mission to Zaporizhzhia and called on Russia and Ukraine to cooperate so the inspectors could travel as soon as possible.
The IAEA has been ready to perform such a mission since June, when we were ready to go. But unfortunately, due to political factors and other considerations, it was not possible. We've seen what has happened over the past 2 months. We cannot allow such factors to delay us any longer. I reiterate that the military actions that have even the smallest potential to jeopardize nuclear safety or nuclear security at such a nuclear installation must stop immediately. These actions would lead us to serious consequences. The IAEA is ready to help avert such an escalation of the crisis.
India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj, addressed the United Nations Security Council meeting on Thursday. Speaking at the UNSC briefing, Kamboj said that India is carefully following the developments regarding the safety and security of Ukraine. She also lauded the efforts made by International Atomic Energy Agency in this regard.
We continue to carefully follow developments regarding the safety and security of Ukraine's nuclear power reactors and facilities. India attaches high importance to ensuring the safety and security of these facilities. We also accord high priority to the discharge by the International Atomic Energy Agency of its safeguards and monitoring activities in accordance with its statute in an effective, non-discriminatory and efficient manner. And we value the efforts of the agency in this regard.
Ruchira Kamboj further said that ever since the conflict in Ukraine has started, India has consistently called for an end to the violence and has asked both the nations to choose the path of diplomacy and dialogue.
India continues to remain concerned over the situation in Ukraine. Since the beginning of the conflict, India has consistently called for an immediate cessation of hostilities and an end to violence. We've called upon both sides to return to the path of diplomacy and dialogue. We support all diplomatic efforts to end the conflict.
The Western countries have pledged to provide yet another aid to Ukraine as the country battles Russian forces. The countries committed more than 1.5 billion euros in cash, equipment and training to boost Ukraine's military capabilities. The money was pledged by a group of 26 countries at a conference in Copenhagen. The Western aid will be used to supply existing weapons, missiles and ammunition, increase weapon production for Ukraine, train Ukrainian soldiers and demine war-torn areas in Ukraine. Danish Defence Minister Morten Botskov said that defence ministers of Poland, Slovakia and the Czech Republic signalled willingness to expand productions of artillery systems, munitions and other military equipment to Ukraine. And now news from Latvia and Estonia, who have withdrawn from a cooperation group between China and over a dozen Central and Eastern European countries on Thursday, following in the footsteps of Baltic neighbour Lithuania, which withdrew last year. In a statement, Latvia and Estonia Foreign Ministry said, "We will continue to strive for constructive and pragmatic relations with China, both bilaterally as well as through European Union-China cooperation based on mutual benefit, respect for international law, human rights and the international rules-based order." Relations between Lithuania and China worsened after the former allowed Taiwan to open a de facto embassy late last year. Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Greece, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Slovenia are among countries that remain in the cooperation format. The move comes amid Western criticism towards China over escalating military pressure on democratically ruled Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, and Beijing's strengthening of ties with Russia during the invasion of Ukraine. The US State Department has said that it respects and supports Estonia and Latvia's sovereign decision to no longer participate in the 16+1 initiative. Now, in a statement, it said that it will continue to closely support their efforts to make the Baltics a more resilient and prosperous region. Estonia and Latvia are important and valued NATO allies and key US partners across a number of issues, including through our strong defense ties, our strong economic ties, as well as the promotion of democracy and human rights. Beyond our commitments to these same values, our free, democratic countries produce prosperity that helps both of our economies thrive. And time for updates now from Taiwan, where Taiwan has ended its routine exercise as China's military announced completion of various tasks. Taiwan has rejected the one country, two systems model that was proposed by Beijing. Chinese state television released footage of its military conducting live-fire joint exercises. Meanwhile, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the US cannot allow China to normalize a new level of pressure on Taiwan.
Taiwan ended its routine military exercises in the southern county of Pingtung on Thursday, where soldiers were seen for the second time this week firing artillery to simulate a defense against a Chinese invasion. The exercises, which had been planned and announced before the start of the current cross-strait tensions, came a day after China's military announced it had completed various tasks, potentially signaling an end to days of war games.
The determination of all of you to defend your country has not only deeply touched me, but also has been deeply felt by all of our fellow countrymen. Currently, the Chinese military threat has not abated. I would like to stress again that while Taiwan will not escalate conflicts or provoke disputes, we will firmly defend our sovereignty and national security and fastidiously defend democracy and freedom.
Taiwan has also rejected the one country, two systems model proposed by Beijing in a white paper published earlier this week.
The two sides of the strait are not affiliate to each other, and we reject one country, two systems model. Only Taiwan's people can decide its future, and only the government elected by the people can represent the people of Taiwan in the international community. The statement from China goes against the facts and reality in the two straits, and it also goes against the international law. China was merely using US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan as an excuse to create a new normality to intimidate Taiwan's people.
来恐吓台湾的人民。
Meanwhile, Chinese state television CCTV on Thursday also released more footage of its military conducting live-fire joint exercises and simulated sea and land attacks. In Washington on Wednesday, House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi said the United States could not allow China to normalize the new level of pressure on Taiwan.
I think what we saw with China was they were trying to establish sort of a new normal. And we just can't let that happen. We didn't go there to talk about China. We went there to praise Taiwan. We went there to show our friendship, to say China cannot isolate Taiwan. So that's what it was about.
On another front, a Taiwanese NGO asserted the self-ruled island faces Chinese-funded disinformation campaigns on social media. Wu Min-swan, CEO and co-founder of Doublethink Lab, describes this as a long-term threat. He claims online disinformation in Taiwan could often be traced to China and was typically intended to sow uncertainty in the community and create distrust towards the government. Wu runs a team of data analysts and security specialists who operate out of a discrete building in a residential neighborhood. His team remains largely anonymous.
We see a lot of inauthentic bots or fake accounts who post stuff that targeting Taiwan's politics or societal issues. Sometimes we can trace back those stuff is originated from Chinese websites, content farm, or actually the stories from Weibo, or the stories generated by Communist Youth League, which is some sort of a state or party affiliated actors.
Wu said his team deployed algorithmic mechanisms to separate government-funded disinformation from genuine criticism or dissent against Taiwan's government. By influencing not only specific elections or debates, he said such disinformation campaigns were looking to create a climate of fear. DD India.
Shifting focus now to Pakistan, where the economy is facing serious debt burden and looming danger of default on external loans. Yet the Pakistani policymakers are acting more in desperation rather than focusing on structural reforms as sought by the IMF for its extended fund facility program to help the economy overcome its balance of payment crisis and shortage of foreign exchange. Pakistan is yet again making efforts to seek loans and funds from external sources as it is neither able to attract foreign investment nor find any development partner interested in loaning foreign exchange to avert a default-like situation. The crisis is so severe that the Pakistan Federal Cabinet last month approved an ordinance to bypass all the procedures for the process and abolish regulatory checks for emergency sale of states' public sector assets to foreign countries. Pakistan currently ranks number 4 in Bloomberg's Sovereign Debt Vulnerability Ranking, a composite measure of the country's default risk. News now from Brazil, where thousands of youngsters thronged the streets of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo to demand fair elections and denounce recent education funding cuts. The demonstrators, mainly students, raised concerns over President Jair Bolsonaro's rejecting the electoral results. The students also denounced Bolsonaro's government cuts to federal spending on higher education. Bolsonaro has questioned Brazil's electronic voting system and attacked the Supreme Court justices who oversee elections. Brazil's election is expected to go to a second-round runoff between Bolsonaro and Lula on October 30th if neither candidate wins 50% of the valid votes on the 2nd of October. UK Prime Ministerial contenders Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss clashed on tax cuts and economy. Rishi Sunak said on Thursday his rival Liz Truss's economic plans could push millions of the UK's most vulnerable people into a real destitution. Truss has also in fact warned that raising taxes would likely lead to a recession and promised to reverse some tax rises.
If you support a plan that Liz is suggesting, which says she doesn't believe in doing that, doesn't believe in providing direct financial support to those groups of people, and that's what she said, because she thinks her tax cut is going to help them, which it is not, we are going to, as a Conservative government, leave millions of incredibly vulnerable people at the risk of real destitution. Now, I think that is a moral failure.
But those tax changes will cost £30 billion. That is affordable within our current budget. We'll still be able to pay debt down after 3 years. But I'm afraid to say the plans of raising taxes are likely to lead to a recession, and with a recession it'll be harder to pay the debt down.
Well, it's time for us to slip into a very short break. On the other side, devastation caused by climate change across the globe. Stay with us.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Мы
Nous sommes land.
نحن هنود.
India.
ما हिंदी हस्ती.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast News, and now some weather-related stories. Climate change is the greatest existential threat to society, driving wildfires, flooding and species extinctions. Wildfires have raged for a third day in southwestern France on Thursday, ravaging forests and forcing 10,000 people to evacuate their homes. With no let-up in scorching temperatures likely before the weekend, firefighters backed by water-bombing aircrafts battled on many fronts, saying the massive fire could change direction at any moment. Houston's firefighters prepared for another day of wildfires on Thursday in the Gironde region of southwestern France. The blazes have now destroyed homes and forced the evacuation of over 10,000 residents, razing about 6,200 hectares of land. In central Portugal, harsh wildfires continue to rage, destroying thousands of hectares of land. Locals have been struggling to protect their livelihoods. Meanwhile, over 1,500 firefighters deployed to douse the fire in the central Covilhã region fought the blaze even on the sixth day. The fire has burnt now 10,500 hectares of land, including parts of the Serra de Estrela National Park. Extreme heat wave has been baking parts of Europe, especially Spain and France. The European Space Agency said on Thursday that various districts across Portugal were on red alert for extreme fire risk. The source of River Thames has dried up further downstream than ever before as England looks set to enter a drought that some experts say the country is unprepared for. According to Britain's Met Office, this July was the driest for England since 1935, with an average rainfall at 23.1 millimetres, just 35% of the average for the month. The River Thames stretches 215 miles across southern England from Gloucestershire in the west through the heart of London before entering the sea at Essex to the east. Moving on to Asia, the heaviest rain in Seoul in 115 years has spurred the South Korean capital to revive a $1.15 billion plan to improve drainage after floods exposed how even the affluent Gangnam district is vulnerable to climate change-driven extreme weather. The underground tunnels were originally proposed in 2011 after heavy rains and landslides killed 16 people, many of them in Gangnam. But the plan was put on hold amid decreased precipitation and budget issues in the following years. This week's torrential rain killed at least 11 people across the northern part of the country as of Thursday and knocked out power, caused landslides and flooded roads and subways. In the western United States state California, that is already facing the brunt of flash floods, Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled a new water strategy that plans for a future with 10% less water due to aridification. The new water strategy shifts the emphasis from conservation to capturing more water that otherwise flows out to sea. The plan announced on Thursday calls for creating storage for 4 million acre-feet of water and recycling or reusing 800,000 acre-feet per year by 2030, in addition to more stormwater capture and desalination projects. Climate change has contributed to more severe droughts, but has also set the stage for more intense flooding when rain does fall, as was demonstrated last week in California's Death Valley, one of the hottest, driest parts of the United States. And now let's take a look at updates on COVID-19 from across the globe. So far, COVID-19 has infected more than 59 crore 28 lakh people globally. The number of recoveries from the disease stand above 56 crores 48 lakhs, while the virus has claimed 64 lakh 47,000 lives worldwide. The United States continues to remain the worst affected by registering the highest number of COVID-19 cases in the world. The COVID numbers across the country tally remains above 9 crore 44 lakh, whereas the number of fatalities from the disease have been logged as above 10 lakh 61,000. And now looking at Europe, where France recorded the maximum number of cases by reporting more than 3 crore 41 lakh cases, whereas Germany and UK stand second and third in the list. Germany has reported over 3 crore 14 lakh and the UK recorded over 2 crore 34 lakh COVID-19 cases so far. They're followed by Italy, which has reported above 2 crore 14 lakh cases of the disease. Well, time for another short break. We'll be back with more on the other side. Stay with us. Well, and now let's get you all the news from the national segment. The 13th edition of the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne will kick-start today. The largest annual celebration of the Indian cinema outside of India showcases some of the most diverse, inclusive, groundbreaking films and filmmakers, all while encapsulating the best of Indian cinema from the Indian subcontinent. Over 100 films from a range of genres, themes and voices for audiences to enjoy both in person and online will be screened at the festival. A series of exciting events have also been curated for the audiences to immerse themselves into the world of cinematic brilliance. The International Youth Day is being celebrated today to acknowledge and amplify the importance of youth participation in current affairs. This year's theme is Intergenerational Solidarity, creating a world for all ages to combat ageism and build bridges between generations. From the wisdom of youth to the energy and idealism of the elderly, we must welcome and leverage the gifts people of all ages bring and ensure no one is left behind. The world's problems are too vast for the entire generations to be absent from helping address them. Thus, young people's efforts and contributions, big and small, toward righting the world's wrongs and pulling others along with them is being celebrated. Today's youth are tomorrow's leaders who know that nothing will change if they stand by. Change only happens when they stand up. Well, the World Elephant Day is also being celebrated today to raise awareness about the plight of elephants all across the world. The day tries to highlight why these animals should be protected and what laws and measures can be enacted to ensure survival of these gentle giants. There are many risks that elephants face, from illegal ivory trading to increased human-animal conflict. Their habitats are also threatened by human activities. Elephants are very intelligent creatures, just like dolphins and apes. They are capable of showing emotions such as grief, empathy and compassion. Elephants pick up seismic vibrations through their feet to communicate with each other. We at DD India urge everyone to celebrate the World Elephant Day by sharing solutions for preventing the exploitation of these majestic creatures and by learning more about them. On the World Elephant Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated the commitment to protect the elephant. In a tweet, he said, "You would be happy to know that India houses about 60% of all Asian elephants. The number of elephant reserves has risen in the last 8 years. I also laud all those involved in protecting the elephants. The successes in elephant conservation must be viewed in context of the larger efforts underway in India to minimize human-animal conflict and integrating local communities and their traditional wisdom in furthering environmental consciousness." The Union Cabinet Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bhupendra Yadav, also extended greetings on the World Elephant Day. Sharing a video on Twitter, the minister stressed that until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. He said that today is the day to rekindle our love for our jumbos and renew our pledge to protect them and their habitat. A startup based in Bengaluru has developed the world's first self-learning braille literacy device, Annie. The device enables visually impaired children to learn independently. Annie is available in 9 different languages, and over 500 units have been sold to around 50 blind schools and institutes across 16 states. More in our next report.
Annie, the world's first self-learning braille literacy device, is going places. Developed by Bengaluru-based startup Thinkerwell Labs, Annie enables visually impaired children learn independently. They learn to read, write and type in braille in a gamified way. This revolutionary device is being used in blind schools in several locations across India.
The process that we followed to design and build Annie is digitizing the current pedagogy of braille learning. We've looked at the different ways that they learn braille, for example using wooden blocks with marbles or egg cartons with ping pong balls. Across the globe the processes remain the same. So we've tried to digitize that entire aspect for the entire learning curve and bring up Annie.
Annie is available in 9 different languages, including Kannada, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi and Malayalam. What makes Annie a game changer is that it can be seamlessly integrated in mainstream schools. Any regular teacher can cater to the learning needs of a child with visual impairments studying in an inclusive setting. This is important as many visually impaired children in India and abroad struggle in mainstream schools.
Annie has a speaker and also an option to connect your headphones if needed, and it will take you through different lessons, exercises, games, songs, different ways of learning in a gamified manner. Annie is also a connected device that connects to the internet through which it can download new content.
Annie started as a college project in Bits Pilani under the name Project Mudra. The larger and broader vision of the co-founders motivated them to take it further, and who knew that it would take them to a different level altogether.
This was, one of its kind device, so never heard of before. There was a lot of struggle in initial days, but they were so passionate, he and his friends, they were so dedicated, passionate and very hard working. Now I am really so proud of what he has achieved in life. So wherever I go, people talk to me about his, Dilip has achieved this, I am so proud, I feel so happy and proud.
During Digital India Week 2022, brand ambassador of Thinkerwell Labs, 11-year-old Prathmesh Sinha, demonstrated the product to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which also went viral on social media. Over 500 units of Annie have been sold in India to around 50 blind schools and institutes across 16 states. Around 450 units have been sold abroad, and pilots are on in several countries. In the next 3 years, Thinkerwell Labs is set to deliver 2,100 units to a US distributor, calling it Poly in the American market. The startup, which has received various awards and recognitions, has tied up with several district and state governments including Jharkhand, Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra to provide self-learning, gamified and interactive devices for children with visual impairment. Abhishek Mahajan's report, Bengaluru, DD India.
Well, facial capture technology is in wide use today, but it comes at a cost. The specialized cameras and lighting rigs are bulky and expensive, not to mention the time and effort spent processing and tuning the work. A London-based startup wants to help you step into the metaverse with your real face instead of the cartoon-like avatars of today's metaverse and video games. Here's more in our next report.
LumiRhythmic, a facial capture technology company, has emerged from stealth mode after 2 years of work. Their new technology can provide high-quality facial scans in a matter of minutes. LumiRhythmic, a spin-off from Imperial College London, has developed artificial intelligence-powered software that can create lifelike digital model of a person's face in minutes using off-the-shelf technology. Eventually, they hope their simple setup could be replicated in shopping malls where customers can create their digital twins to take into the metaverse. Their algorithms can separate reflectance on a subject's face into individually analyzable components and to model each with an appropriate reflectance model for the most realistic facial rendering, all powered by artificial intelligence. LumiRhythmic co-founder and professor at Imperial College London, Abhijit Ghosh, believes their proprietary technology is primed to benefit ever-evolving immersive virtual reality environments.
So at LumiRhythmic, we are trying to create the most realistic possible 3D reconstructions of human faces and 3D computer graphics objects that want to populate the metaverse. The first product that we've now released once we come out of stealth is this desktop's 3D scanning system that's behind me, that is just using commodity tablets and smartphones in a carefully designed setup that enables us to achieve pretty much the same very high quality skin appearance capture along with 3D shape capture.
The results are ultra-realistic Hollywood-style 3D renderings of a person's face, but created in minutes at a fraction of the cost. These could then be mapped onto your virtual self.
We came from the Hollywood-style scan devices, and we actually opened a new category to this industry by inventing our technology, combining the photometric and different illumination patterns and also the power of artificial intelligence all together. We bring down from a very large and costly device to the setup we have, which uses off-the-shelf devices and our state-of-the-art process.
LumiRhythmic is preparing to pilot the technology with gaming, beauty tech and ad tech companies and will start a new equity round in autumn 2022 with an aim to rolling out the technology out more widely. While LumiRhythmic might be a newer company, the folks behind it have pretty serious resumes. One of the founders of the company co-developed the Academy Award-winning Lightstage facial capture system. Lightstage was first used in the blockbuster hit Avatar. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, time for another short break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned in.
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India.
Well, it's time to get you now news from the world of business in our next segment, BizBuzz. The Nasdaq retreated to close lower on Thursday despite fresh evidence of cooling inflation on the realization of the Federal Reserve still needs to aggressively boost interest rates to fully tame rising consumer prices. Whereas the drop in PPI raised bets in futures markets that the Fed would hike rates by 50 basis points in September instead of 75 basis points as was expected earlier in the week.
The market took the expectations from 75 basis points at the September meeting down to 50 basis points. We think that's probably a fairly reasonable assumption. The Federal Reserve is continuing to talk, however, quite hawkishly about inflation, and as a result, we expect to see a longer duration of interest rate hikes and probably a lot tighter than most people are going to be comfortable with. Again, we think this inflation number is going to come down, but slowly, and probably end up slowing down corporate earnings growth quite a bit.
The S&P 500 lost 0.071%, while the Nasdaq Composite lost 0.58%, whereas the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.08%. And now let's move on to our next segment, Sports Track, where we get you all the action from the world of sports. First up, Rahul has received the green signal from the BCCI's medical team, clearing his participation in the forthcoming 3 ODI tour of Zimbabwe. Shikhar Dhawan, originally named captain for the short tour, will serve as a deputy to the returning Rahul. Rahul, who has not played international cricket since February this year, has been laid low by a series of injury and health concerns. Right after the IPL, he was scheduled to captain India in the home T20Is against South Africa, but missed out owing to a groin injury. The spell on the sidelines was extended after it was revealed that the 30-year-old would require surgery. Consequently, Rahul missed the tour of England and Ireland. All the 3 ODIs of India's tour will be held at the Harare Sports Club, with the series kicking off on the 18th of August. The World Cup in Qatar will kick off a day earlier than scheduled. Governing body FIFA said this on Thursday after its ruling bureau agreed unanimously to hold the opening ceremony and the host nation's first match on Sunday, that is the 20th of November. The original plan was for the opening ceremony to be held before Qatar's game on the 21st of November against Ecuador, which would have created the unusual situation of 2 matches, Senegal versus Netherlands and England versus Iran, being held before the ceremony. Normally, the ceremony is conducted before the kick-off of the first game of the tournament. FIFA said that decision followed an assessment of the competition and operational implications, as well as a thorough consultation process and an agreement with key stakeholders and the host country. Now, as India celebrates 75 years of independence, the Indian men's hockey team post their victorious return from the Commonwealth Games 2022 in Birmingham visited the National War Memorial in New Delhi on Thursday. The 11-member team showed their deep interest in visiting this monument of great national importance, which symbolizes long tradition of unflinching loyalty, valor and sacrifice in the line of duty. With the inquisitiveness of knowing and learning about the glorious history of the country, the team took a tour around the monument and visited the Veerta Chakra, that is a circle of bravery, the Tyag Chakra, the circle of sacrifice, the Param Yodha Sthal, etc. Meanwhile, coming over the walls of Tyag Chakra, some of the team members said it is really a proud moment for us to see more than 26,000 names of martyrs etched here, and without missing the chance, we would like to offer our homage to the martyrs of Kargil war. Now let's take a look at the major happenings that took place on this day in history. It's August 12th today, and in today's edition of the Saga of Freedom, we are remembering many such freedom struggle heroes that paved India's way to freedom. Let's take a look.
In today's episode, we remember freedom fighter Bandhu Singh Srinath, who was martyred on the 12th of August, 1857. He participated in the First War of Independence against the British in the Gorakhpur area of Uttar Pradesh.
Bandhu Singh was born on the 1st of May, 1833, in the erstwhile Dumri Riyasat, now in Uttar Pradesh. He used to fight the British with guerrilla war technique. There is a saying that he used to sacrifice heads of enemies in the Tarkulla Devi temple. He was arrested by the British and hanged publicly at Alinagar Chauraha in Gorakhpur on the 12th of August, 1857.
It is said that the hangman was unable to hang him 7 times due to breaking of the rope by the grace of Tarkulla Devi. It was successful only the 8th time when Bandhu Singh prayed to Tarkulla Devi.
A memorial to honor Shaheed Bandhu Singh has been built near the temple of Tarkulla Devi near Chauri Chaura, Uttar Pradesh. Every year, people join in a fair at the temple and remember the brave son of the soil, Bandhu Singh.
We also remember Ajmer, who participated in the First War of Independence in 1857. Ajmer organized a group of independence activists during the uprising and led it to fight the British at different places in the Bombay Presidency. He was captured by the British in the course of their attacks and put on trial for aiding and abetting the rebellion against the British.
Ajmer was sentenced to imprisonment for 10 years with hard labor in irons and transported to the Andaman Islands, where he died in detention on the 12th of August, 1859.
We also remember nationalist Balwant Singh alias Banta Singh, who was executed on the 12th of August, 1915, a resident of Sangwal, Jalandhar, Punjab. Balwant Singh took part in the Ghadar Party activities against British rule. In 1914, he formed a group of revolutionaries among the returning emigrants and was involved in 2 raids in Jalandhar during December 1914 and January 1915. His house was searched by the police and a large quantity of revolutionary literature recovered.
He led the attack against the military guard at Amritsar and Nangal Kalan in Punjab. He was arrested in July 1915 and executed on the 12th of August 1915.
We remember independence activist Balbhim Khataukar, who was born on the 12th of August 1900 at village Pusesauli, district Satara, Maharashtra. The Gandhian slogan of "Do or Die" during the Quit India movement inspired Balbhim Khataukar to join the independence struggle in Khatau Taluka, Satara. On the 9th of September 1942, he joined a demonstration of more than 2,000 under the leadership of Parshuram Gharge.
Singing patriotic songs and shouting nationalist slogans, it marched on to hoist the tricolour Congress flag on the Vaduz Kacheri building.
The marchers were stopped by the police officials, and on refusal to disperse, they were fired upon. The firing resulted in the death of 9 persons, and Balbhim Khataukar was one among them. We salute the brave martyrs. We also remember Quit India student activist Lal Padamdhar Singh from district Rewa, Madhya Pradesh. As a student leader of Allahabad University, he led a protest rally during the Quit India movement in Allahabad on the 12th of August 1942.
The protesting students were fired upon by the British police that day. In the indiscriminate police firing, Lal Padamdhar Singh lost his life on the spot at the age of 21.
And now let's take a look at today's weather forecast. Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram and Tripura, Gujarat region, Konkan and Goa, coastal and south interior Karnataka. Thunderstorm accompanied with lightning and gusty winds at a speed of reaching 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, very likely at isolated places over interior Karnataka, with lightning at isolated places over Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit, Baltistan and Muzaffarabad, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi, UP, Rajasthan, Gangetic, West Bengal, Assam and Meghalaya. And now let's take a look at the maximum and minimum temperatures. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made a clarion call of Har Ghar Tiranga as the nation is all set to celebrate 75 years of independence. The Aerial Delivery Research and Development Establishment, Agra, has created the first ever skydiving formation of the human Tiranga in the air at a height of 15,000 feet above the ground level. As we wrap up this edition of Breakfast News, we are leaving you with the captivating glimpse of the formation. Take a look. Namaskar.